Awesome. Well, while everyone's doing that, we can get started anyway. So, look, thank you for taking the time to join us today, and a very warm welcome to you all to our webinar today of harvest success and how to master row crop finances going into the 2025 season. I don't think there's been a time, in recent history when it's been more important for US farmers to be in control of their finances and have that really clear understanding of what the next season's going to look like and what they can take control of for their financial future. So it's fantastic to have so many of you with us today, and a real mix from across the United States as well, which is really awesome. And I know that we've got a real mix of accountants on the call today, farmers. We've got a few rural bankers and some consultants as well. So again, we've got that whole farming team coming together, which we're really excited about. Just to really quickly introduce myself, my name is Mitchell Parks, and I'm one of the account executives, obviously based in Denver, and joined alongside my colleague Erin Eric, who is also in Denver today. So if you've been on some of our webinars before, thanks for coming back. It's great to have you here again. And if it's the first one you've joined with us, we're stoked to have you here, and hopefully you'll learn something today, and if at the very least learn a little bit about Figured and learn a little bit about our special guests today as well. So on the call today, I'm really excited to introduce Holly and Jonathan Harrelson. Jonathan and Holly are based down in Texas and are the owners and operators of Empire Ag. Jonathan and Holly, I'd love for you guys to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Like Mitch said, I'm Jonathan Harrelson. I am a sixth generation farmer and rancher. And it's sixth generation in experience, but first generation by the books. And what I mean by that is we did what everybody says is unthinkable, not smart, don't do it. We started our own farm. And it was tough. And in that journey, I've met so many people that were farmers just like us, and in varying sizes, experience, financial positions. And I also realized that there was a lot of folks out there that were struggling, and they may be silently struggling. So in that, we built Empire Ag. And our goal in that was to basically you guys spend a lifetime building an operation and building these empires that we want to help further that and get you in a path of profitability, in a path where the stress and anxiety that overtakes your operation and day to day, that we can alleviate that. And we work with, we've served over 200 families. We've had 22 different states that we've represented. We've been in all sorts of operations, from produce to the typical title crops: corn, wheat, soybeans, hay producers. We also we have a plentiful supply of cattle in our group, from the stocker operator, the cow-calf guy, to the independent farmer feeder in Iowa. We represent all and help those folks in every aspect of farming and ranching. The spots that we like to focus on, so we call it our annual mastermind. That is our full scale consulting. It's a 1-year program. You're with us. You get one-on-one work, and we have a network that's in there. So you get to interact with these other progressive individuals, and we try to help make you more profitable. We have varying risk management. So to give you a little bit about my background, I was a commodities broker with a firm in Chicago. And enjoyed the risk management side of things, but I felt like I could add more value into my fellow producers, and I wanted to get back to the farm. That was the main goal. So we've got some risk management plans that we like to put together for our producers and work with them hand in hand. In this journey, we have helped a lot of families that their succession becomes the big topic. There's a lot of intertwined family workings, and at some point, we've got to separate those, and who's going to carry that on and have the tough discussions. And a lot of times we're that intermediary that can step in and try to help that family through that process. In all of this, we started Empire Financial Services. That's my wife Holly took over that aspect, and where we try to get the books clean. A lot of guys had spreadsheets when we first started, and they weren't very good spreadsheets at that. Um, so from a trying to streamline and make it simple for our the CPAs that were working with these clients, we wanted to try to streamline that bookkeeping service and get that to where it looked a lot better. It was cleaner. It was neater. You could actually rely on the data that was in there. We also served as kind of a chief financial officer for a lot of our operations. Some of that was by bank directive. They were requiring that someone look over their financials, give us some reports, and it didn't need to come from the farmer. They wanted it to come from a third party. So we served in that capacity. But overall, we try to help get information out. We do have our weekly email. We have our podcast. We're fixing to revamp and go our second season. But our overall goal is to add profitability, efficiency, and to have you operating at your top, whether that's physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Brilliant. Now, and from the Figured side as well, we extremely value our partnership with Jonathan, Holly, and the whole Empire Ag team. It's been really rewarding for us. And actually, just this week, myself and Forsyth, one of our head of marketing, spent a couple of days down in Texas with Jonathan and Holly too. So now we really value the partnership, and it's been great working with them over the last sort of year or so. For those of you who might be new to Figured as well, just to really quickly touch on, I guess, our story and where we come from. So we're the world's largest farm financial management platform, but significantly, we're the only one that integrates with cloud accounting platforms like QuickBooks Online or Xero, for example. So then what does that really mean, though? So essentially what you're doing is Figured is going to take the production data, so what's happening on farm, whether that's your bushels harvested, whether that's your livestock per head movement, your milk production, and marry that up with the financial information that you already have on hand in a single ledger. So what I mean by that is that you've got your QuickBooks Online file. That data is going to flow through automatically into Figured to give you that real holistic view of where you're standing today from a financial standpoint. But then we break it down and add in the color to it. We're going to add in that production information to really paint a clear picture of what's actually happening on farm. So we've been around for about 10 years or so now. As I'm sure you picked up, I do carry a bit of a weird accent. So originally from New Zealand, and Figured is obviously a New Zealand company originally. But in that time, we now have over 35,000 farms with just over 400 accounting firms worldwide across the United States and Canada, the UK and Ireland, and then obviously Australia and New Zealand. So these stats on screen are just some from the 2023 farming season. And to give you a sense of it, New Zealand is the world's largest dairy exporter, and about 70% of that total production is managed through the Figured platform. So part of that is, we have this so much, I guess, unique data and this cloud financial information coming through that our Reserve Bank, which is, I guess, the equivalent of the Fed in your guys' case, uses the data that's held within Figured to give their State of the Nation updates. So we're using that data to model and plan out, what could be happening over the next few seasons, and that then trades into commodity engineering, whatever it might be. We use that data to, get that really clear picture of what's going into the next season. But obviously, why we're all here today, and for those of you that joined us on our webinar last week with the VARC team, you're going to probably see a couple of similar trends. But the reality is that we know that farming is complicated. Myself, I come from a generational family of farmers. All my uncles, aunties, cousins, my parents were farmers back in southern New Zealand and still are. And so we have this appreciation that it's extremely unique, it's very specialized, and that is obviously going to make managing the farm finances particularly difficult. So financial management we see in a lot of other industries is pretty well advanced comparatively, but agriculture seems still pretty far behind, and particularly in terms of technology in that sense. This is largely because, there hasn't been a specialist tool for it as such. We still see plenty of examples, and I'm sure some of you on the call relate to this, where you've got that shoebox full of receipts, pens and papers that you take into the advisor each year and try and get everything done. And then your plan could be written on the back of a napkin that then gets folded up and put in the drawer again and forgotten about until next season. We just know it's not the most effective way to be doing it. So Figured and our partners are working to bring together, this specific tool for agriculture. And so we're excited to obviously share that with you today for those of you that are new to Figured. For those of you who've experienced a bit of us before, hopefully you pick up a few new ideas and trends, but also some really, practical examples and some real opinions from Jonathan and Holly on how they've been utilizing Figured in their day-to-day work as well. Jonathan, I was just wondering if, you'd like to take us through, some of the examples that you might have seen, over the last 12, 18 months, and how some of these examples have had a real impact on your farming clients that you work with.
Absolutely, Mitch. Farming, it's a crazy business, and we're all insane for wanting to do this. It's a great lifestyle, but it's not a really great business model when it comes to profitability. We've got all of these aspects that we're fixing to touch on that impact us daily. Higher interest rates and input costs. So we just went through the last 2 years where we had one of the largest run-ups in commodity prices. Typically, we get a period where we have some extreme profitability because input prices typically will lag a year before they meet up with that rise in prices. The problem is this time they went synonymous, and so they rallied together. And honestly, when you get to looking at the balance sheets, a lot of farmers actually made less money during this peak in commodity prices than in years before. That leads us into the next part, the volatile commodity prices. Volatility creates opportunities, but this isn't your 1950s through 70s timeframe that your father or grandfather farmed through. This has created an opportunity, and you have to be a better manager. You have to be an active participant in the markets in order to capitalize on these wide swings. The one thing we've seen is some of our farms, go from looking at a projected net of $600,000 to $800,000, and then in one season we could see that shift all the way to losing $150,000 to $200,000, and having to count on crop insurance to be that barrier to help bring them back to a break even. This creates another aspect that is an Achilles heel for all of us in agriculture. We rely on capital. Usually that's borrowed capital from banks. And with the extreme volatility that we've seen, the high interest rates, it's put pressure on our cash flow position. And a lot of these bankers are starting to retreat and walk back from agriculture. They look at row crop farming and say, hey, I know that you've had an operating note of $1 million for the last 5 or 6 years, but we're going to cut you back to 750 and hope that you can do it. It's not based on anything other than their gut reaction to what's going on. You look at the weather volatility. I don't care what part of the world that we have been in. It is if Iowa gets a flash drought pop up, the world is going to be screaming about how short corn we're going to be for that year. And it drives that commodity price. And so I think if you, as a manager, if you're not getting actively involved in these markets whenever they run up and run down, you're going to get caught on the short end of the stick. And utilizing your QuickBooks and being able to flow that into Figured, it gives us that opportunity in order to see where those prices actually make sense. And we're not, just saying, hey, because $4 corn or $5 corn is an emotional number for us to pull the trigger. We're actually making that decision based on management on real figures on our data for our farm, because what your neighbor does doesn't matter on what you do. And yes, we're all raising the same crops in livestock, but it's all that extra that's below the line that impacts on the profitability for us.
Yeah, and that's exactly it as well, Jonathan. Like we're wanting to be able to, I guess, help mitigate some of those factors as well, because a lot of them, we can't control the weather, as an example. So how can we be better placed to manage a lot of that as well? So coming into this year, it's no surprise that profitability is now the number one objective for farmers globally, and that's according to AgriReb's 2024 State of the Farmer report. And where they interview and ask questions of farmers globally of what is the most important thing to you. And what's interesting is that farmers don't traditionally get into farming to make money. It's other reasons. It's the freedom and the lifestyle, love of the land. It's what your parents and what your family have always done. But now that profitability is the number one priority, it does mean that obviously being in control of those farms' finances is going to be more important than ever. And Jonathan's touched on a lot of examples there of why that's the case. So what does being in control really mean? And what does great farm financial management look like, across the row crop space coming into this next season? And I think, Erin, you might take us through a couple of points on what that could look like as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Jonathan, I really love how you mentioned it's now more than ever, you need to become an active participant in managing your business. And a lot of that starts with just being in control of your farm finances. If you're in our last webinar, this is going to look really similar, but in our experiences, tens of thousands of farmers and hundreds of their advisors worldwide, being in control of your farm finances largely means having confidence in those numbers, that baseline level of confidence, clarity around what's going on and how profitable you are. So knowing how you're tracking today, looking ahead to the future, not just, what's been in the past, and then having that bank ready financial profile that you can access at any point in time. If we start to break down what each one of these means, which is what we'll be getting into right after this, but we can start to get a good idea of what themes make up that great farm financial management. One of those being first, the confidence in the numbers. It's really streamlining that data collection, reducing the manual data entry, and eliminating errors to provide ease and efficiency, and then also, a level up in collaboration. Knowing how you're tracking today is really having those ag-specific financial insights and reports available to you, not just because you spent all this work collecting the information, but you could access it at any time in one place. Looking ahead to the future, it's really having a solid plan and budget in place on maybe last year's actuals, and then being able to monitor the variance ongoing, be able to reforecast at any time to see how you're tracking, and then again, adjust if something unanticipated comes up within your crop season, for example. You also then could utilize scenario planning for some of those more larger questions you might be having with maybe succession planning, like Jonathan mentioned, or wanting to expand your operations. And then lastly, having that bank ready financial profile. Combining all of the above that I just mentioned really helps you position yourself in the best light to be able to gain access to capital when and where you need it, and with complete efficiency. However, we have found that typically when you're wanting to get in control of your finances, or just feel in a better headspace when the times get tough, it is to work harder, just get on with it, put your head down and keep on keeping on in hopes that something will change. But managing finances isn't a problem that you can really work harder through, especially when you're on your own. In this case, we've seen working smarter is the best route to go. And not having the right tools to support you in managing these farm finances and running, successful and sustainable practices is extremely difficult. There needs to be an easier way, which is what we're going to talk to today. But that easier way for great financial management for row crops, we really believe starts with the farming team. But before we dive into the specifics, again, we really think first and foremost that great farm financial management starts with having the right team on board. That could be, Jonathan or Holly, or your accountant might be on this webinar today, or you might have a really strong, team within, your farm operations in general. But particularly when things get tough, as they are for a lot of people right now, and we do anticipate in, the next 6 months, 18 months, our farmers need the right people around them to provide support. When it comes to the finances, you shouldn't be doing it alone. So who, specifically do you see on that farming team? We've found that farming team consists not only of yourself as a farmer or you as the accountant, if you're, in control of your clients' financials solely, but that really consists of the farmer, the accountant, the banker, and maybe a consultant to ensure profitability, if that is the number one priority. Farmers are awesome on the farming side. Like Jonathan mentioned, it takes an extreme amount of expertise to be able to be in this industry. But accountants are really great with the numbers. They're best positioned to deliver that advisory. For the banker side, they're obviously, in control of that access to capital. But having that farming team succinct and collaborating at all times really allows you to utilize specialist skills. Everyone brings something different to the table. When you bring all members of that team together, it allows you to leverage unique and a special set of skills that they all really possess. Rather than working through things alone or putting your head down, working harder, you might have the skills or the knowledge in trying to do everything by yourself. Focusing on your own expertise, we've really seen, help people strive to the goals that they have. So obviously the farmer will let you handle everything in the field. The accountant that's working on the numbers, that's planning ahead, also the consultant sense. And then as the banker, you have the better analysis of risk and being able to provide access to the capital because everyone in this team is on the same page and is looking at the right data and information. Secondly, obviously, it increases collaboration naturally because you're all, working together. It allows you to bounce ideas off of each other, get different opinions, perspective on things, share different experiences from other clients, for example, and make it easier to make better decisions. And then lastly, this is kind of obvious, but it puts everyone again on the same page. You're all working off the same information and data. You're driving towards the same goals, and you're a cohesive team working towards that goal of profitability.
Aaron,
yeah.
Aaron, I want to add something to what you're talking about right here, and
Please.
It goes back to being proactive rather than reactive. And we in production agriculture, and I know that for you guys that are out there listening today, I'm a farmer. I mean, that was my passion to get started. That's where we've been. You get our spray rig, the flow meter went out, and an 8R tractor, the turbo went out, and I'm sitting here with the banker that's calling, wanting reports. I've got to get the guys going again. And somebody's got to be the mechanic, the parts getter, and so you're trying to wear so many hats. And do any of you ever feel like that you're kind of half-hearted in, you're trying to farm, but yet you're trying to be the accountant, you're trying to be get all the reporting for the banker, and you're trying to keep everybody happy. And I feel like this has created an opportunity for you. We're all as producers, we're all tight. We don't want to spend money. I mean, that's the God's honest truth. We're trying to do everything the cheap way. And so for us, building that team, building some trust, building that to where you can do what you need to do. And you talk about lay the stress down and get that away from you. It will make you a better business person. I promise. I've seen it, witnessed it.
Yeah, Jonathan, I love that. I really think like you've probably seen having a strong farming team really change the trajectory of most of the farming businesses that you work with.
Tenfold, and we're out there alone a lot of times. And so
Mhm.
not only do you have all the stuff breaking around you and you're trying to put the pieces together, you've got that negative mental loop that you're just having to kind of dissect and live through.
Yeah.
And it makes it tough.
No, definitely, definitely. So kind of looking at this farming team, how can you utilize each one of these members really to strive towards getting control of your finances? One, to then increase profitability. So what we first want to talk about is that first bubble that I mentioned prior, but getting confidence in the numbers. A way that Figured can help you do that, and what Jonathan and Holly will speak to after a small demo, is really streamlining that data collection and the farm team workflow to enable collaboration across the entire farming team. So just to show you a brief demo here of getting confidence in the numbers. Here I am in the Figured platform. You can see this is the organization view. So if you were a farm with multiple entities or an accountant with all of your farmers living in Figured, this would be what you'd see. So you have each individual farm living here. We have a reporting group, which is a multi-entity, which I'll show you later. But it just, again, brings everyone into one place. Everyone's on the same page. You can invite the people into this organization, or I'll show you into each individual farm that the data is relevant for. You can see there's multiple permissions here. If I go to the particular farm I want to work on today, for example, I can control within the settings each individual person that has access to this farm. So I can invite in the banker, I can invite in the farm consultant or agronomist. I can invite Jonathan in if I really wanted to right now, and be able to control their accesses accordingly. So if I want view only, if I'm the accountant, I just want the farmer to see what I've been working on, or I'm the farmer, taking control in this sense, and want to invite my accountant in, you can do that here. So in addition to like the collaboration aspect and efficiencies of having everything in one place, that live accounting connection does allow you to have confidence in those numbers. How I like to describe a Figured farm with that accounting relationship with their either QuickBooks Online or Xero Cloud accounting is if you connect that file and do not do a single thing in Figured and run their financials, it's going to look the exact same as it does in QuickBooks Online. It's bringing over those organization details down to every single transaction. And then the beauty of Figured, which I'll show you in our subsequent demos here today, is you're building on to those financials with the production data or accrual lens of things. Lastly, what I wanted to show you to kind of that leans into the confidence in the numbers is the ability of multi-entity reporting. So a lot of times now we're working with partners or farmers that, they're trying to combine all these financials from multi-entities, which is really just the nature of agriculture in the US, is having lots of different entities for different things. But Figured allows you to have them live in a group sense in one place, have transfers, consolidated accounts, and then be able to produce financial reports for whomever that information is relevant to, all in one consolidated view. So really having the confidence in those numbers, we find, is kind of that baseline of getting to work with everything past that point. What I wanted to ask you, Jonathan and Holly, kind of on a discussion sense, is having that collaboration and live connection to the accounting platform, how have these kind of helped with the workflow at Empire Ag?
I compared to where we started 5 years ago, I would say like we had a lot of spreadsheets and we had a lot of data that they were trying to pull. And so it would, you would ask for information from these clients, and you know that they want to better their situation, but it would take it might take a month or 2 months to gather this stuff up. And whereas
Mhm.
now we get, I mean, instantaneous. We can look in there and say, "Hey, are you on track or are you not?" Or, uh, what are you thinking on your projections for this year? Maybe we should dive into that. Maybe we should look into that. What do you
Yeah.
think, Holly?
Yeah, and I think we're unique in that we created Empire Ag like backwards, if you will. Like it started with the consulting, and then I kind of came in with the numbers, pulling back into the game. And then it was just, I can almost remember to the day like when we discovered Figured, and it was like, oh my gosh, like this is it. And so it's just been so nice to get off the spreadsheets, get off the pen and paper, get off the napkins, and actually be able to put some useful tools and information out there that you rely on and that you have confidence in. So it's just
Yeah.
been really
How
great.
have you found that live, side of integration being able to help with the confidence and the side of confidence and the numbers side of things?
Yeah, it's great because even if I have found even when I'm on the Figured side that I can click right in, you can click right into a number that you're looking at. You're like, this just doesn't look quite right. And it'll take me right back to our QuickBooks file and we can dig in deep. I've had some calls with a farmer or with farmer clients, and we have the opportunity right then to look and adjust, and they're like, oh, sure enough, that's right. Or maybe not. And it gives you an opportunity to adjust it. And it's just nice that it's like instantaneous. And if we make a change over on the QuickBooks side, we can come back to Figured and just, resync our data. And then we've got it. I mean, it's immediately available for us to do, the next thing that we're on to in Figured.
Yeah.
And I think the time factor, the double entry. So most of the other competitor products and or spreadsheets, what I didn't like about it, it's double entry, and I don't have the time to peel off and spend 2 days doing exactly what I'm paying my bookkeeper to do.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
kind of our
Yeah, I
an
love that.
advantage.
I love that. And that kind of leads nicely into that second, bubble that we wanted to cover today, which is really how can you find and know how you're tracking today? And what we found, one, having that live QuickBooks connection is really the strong suit there, but also the crop season summary report process we found is awesome, which I'll show you here. The planning grid. So again, that budgeting and forecasting, knowing how you're going according to plan, our variance report, and then the crops and livestock gross margin. So having those ag specific reports and insight allows you to, again, have that tracking of how I'm doing according to plan. So going back into the figured platform here, here we're looking at the trackers view. So what I just showed you is kind of those higher level efficiencies you get with Figured, but this is really diving into the backbone of everything you can do. So we have that live QuickBooks Online connection currently. And then on top of those financials, you can create profit centers on the farm, which is what you're seeing here through trackers. So my little farm here, I have some harvests. I also have a beef cattle and a custom cattle operation. So you can create trackers really for anything you're tracking income and expenses for. But diving specifically into the crop tracker itself, I'll look at Corn 22, for example. We have living within the tracker, your income and cost coming from QuickBooks Online. You can create rules that basically completely do this process for you. You'll add your harvest in manually and what fields you planted on, but that's about it. And then you have all of these KPIs and break-evens, production information getting built out from that from that data that's coming throughout your crop season. Once you want to kind of look at when you can look at the tracker to see how you're tracking according to your crop season, you also can as well run a crop season summary report. So this report will have the fields you've planted on here. And then it also builds out your per acre and per unit break-evens. You can then share this report with your team, be able to say, hey, based on the quantities we've harvested, the cost and income coming through, this is how corn is doing specifically and move on from there. So pretty cool in that way to be able to see exactly, you know, how you're going at the click of a finger. And then as well, in addition to the crop season summary report, in the planning grid, you can go ahead and address your budgeting and forecasting. So trackers can be actuals only. You're kind of maybe looking on how, you know, your last season did, but you as well can look in the planning grid as a rolling plan and forecast to today or even into the next year. You can control what view you're looking at because you have your live and your forecast, your live actuals and forecasts living in the same place. You can go ahead and plan down to the account level on a monthly basis, toggle between cash and accrual, and as well then create your full budget for the entire year. Once you have all the work done in your budget, you then can start reporting on a variance. So the workflow would be, you know, this time of year, you've created your budget for 2025. And now throughout the next year, you can go ahead and report on a variance, actuals year to date, forecast year to date, or a number of different views here. And then you'll be able to see your actuals and forecasts side by side with a variance living with them together. And also some other reports just to help you see, okay, how am I doing today in my operations? You have a livestock gross margin. So that would be keeping track of your income and direct costs with your livestock operation. And then in addition, just because we know most people don't only grow one thing, we have a crops gross margin, which you could have your, for example, corn and soybeans living here together and be able to see all your commodities in one place with their accompanying income and costs. So kind of touching on, you know, how you're tracking today, that really, I think, Jonathan and Holly, is the beauty we've found working together, implementing Figured. But specifically, have you utilized any of what I've just covered kind of with some of your clients already?
Absolutely. I mean, to me, the trackers, what I think is really interesting on those is a lot of times we have corn. Let's just say that you harvested corn in 23, you carried it through 24. And a lot of times profitability, we've already secured financing for 24. But we're not accounting for all this grain inventory, and it's hard for us to keep our spreadsheets and the grain bins matching. And, you know, so like for me, utilizing this, I've been able to see a lot of advantage where a producer can actually see if 23 was profitable, is 24, and we can kind of track the movement of that grain or livestock in those varying years. I think that's huge. Holly, what do you think on some of the things you've used it for?
Yeah, I feel like, Aaron, we've probably utilized every tool you've touched on, but obviously the crop season summary has been a huge help and hit. Jonathan, when we originally started this, we were a little bit more heavy into commodity marketing. And so now that we're able to get that break even, I mean, that was like a game changer, a true break even based on real numbers. And so that he could take that, I would pass the reports along to him. He could take that true break even based on per bushel, and then he could go help them actually create a marketing plan. And so that's been useful. Obviously, the planning grid with budgeting and forecasting, cash flow projections has been a huge piece, especially here at the end of the year, that we're utilizing quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know, I would say, Aaron, one of the key pieces when you on your reporting where you've got your direct costs, like when we talk about budgeting, a lot of times everybody only, when I would go ask them, what do you got in your corn crop? And it's like $700. And so what does that $700 actually entail? And typically they're just quoting their direct costs, seed, fertilizer, that kind of stuff. But nobody ever accounts for the property casualty insurance, the trips to town for the parts. It's all the stuff below, and that affects that break-even price. And we've got to have accurate records. And I think this speaks to why had a conversation with a producer yesterday. His bottom line, we were $1.41 on indirect. Like his direct cost, yeah, it hit where he was thinking. So profitability wise, in his head, he thought, we're in a great spot. I can market my corn. But when we get to looking at it, it's a whole lot tighter right now than what he was expecting. And so putting that in relation to $1.15, in this case, it was $1.15 for his corn crop, which affected the $3.15 that we were setting at with direct cost. So that really just shifted where he thought he was at from a profitability standpoint. You know, when we're setting at 430 corn instead of 315, like
Right.
we're essentially at break even today. So
Yeah.
being able to make decisions based on those reports like that has been huge, to be able to give you that visual aid that you can use. And it's not an emotional decision. It is a numbers-based decision that a manager, no different than Jeff Bezos, anybody else that's in the corporate world, they're going to make that decision on numbers and not emotion.
Yep.
And I think that's huge.
One key thing I remember, I had a discussion with a partner once, was that the beauty of the integration and being able to bring that information in is that said there was no hiding from the numbers. It's what's been reconciled, it's what's hit the bank account, and there's no, coming up, I think it was roughly, I spent maybe $3,000. You can pull it up and go, well, actually you spent 4,200. You can see exactly what's been happening. And being able to plan ahead off the back of that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that ties nicely into kind of the third pillar we wanted to talk about, which was looking ahead to the future. You feel confident in your numbers, you're collaborating really nicely as a farming team. We've created budgets and forecasts. We know how we're tracking today. But what happens when we maybe get something come up that, we need to plan 5 years in ahead for, or we want to do a succession plan and need some of that higher level advisory. A lot of the partners Mitch and I have worked with, and even, Jonathan Holly, prior to us implementing Figured at your firm, that type of project is a lot of going to lots of different places, collecting information from a bunch of people, and then you don't hear about waiting on the emails of getting information from them, kind of just the inefficiencies that the admin work of doing kind of looking ahead type information and work. That's where in Figured we tried to kind of help in that process with Figured Scenarios. So Figured Scenarios is really a projection tool. What you can do here and how I help implement it is create a status quo for your farmer, or for yourself as a farmer. You can create a scenario. If I keep on keeping on exactly how I'm doing today, what will my business look like in the next 5 years? Once you create that status quo, you can start building on basically that status quo with any type of question to this scenario. So in this case, I'm doing an annual review. You could do an expansion. You could do a succession plan. It can be 5 to 10 years in advance if you want. And then all that you need for a scenario, you can basically bring as much data or as little data from the Figured file as you'd like, but you could bring the balance sheet in or input the balance sheet here as you wish with the, relevant assets and liabilities for this scenario. And then when you have that set, you can start building on that balance sheet with relevant information and data in the proposition section. So for example, if I'm doing an annual review or an expansion, I have, the land that I anticipate buying in this particular scenario or situation. You then can start putting the income and relevant expenses associated, and then you're given a really beautiful 4-report pack that you can deliver to whomever this information is relevant to, whether that's just yourself as the farmer wanting to review, a dream scenario you have with purchasing a ranch, for example, or you're literally going to the banker with this information. This is the plan that I have. This is the capital I need to be able to do it. And you can see here, you can download them and basically act accordingly, which is pretty cool. I know Jonathan and Holly, we had touched on scenarios briefly, but have you been able to utilize that for any type of the kind of forecasting and budgeting that you're doing at Empire Ag?
Yeah, so I'm really big on cash flow. So if we're going to add something to the enterprise, like I want to make sure that it's going to be a cash flow positive, because our goal is to not create more stress, but to alleviate stress for these operations. And so currently, I've got a succession plan that we're looking at purchasing. Basically, it's going to be a $1.2 million addition to this young farmer. That's going to be basically retiring out, his father and his uncle. Does that make sense? And so our goal was to creatively finance this and get it to where he's not going to be just destitute for the next 10 years. But we've got him to where he's going to be able to survive, and being able to adjust that balance sheet in those scenarios. Like, not only did we just gain $2 million, but it gave us another $1 million worth of equity. So his overall banking position looks great. The problem is that we as producers show up at the bank and we say, "Hey, I'm going to buy my dad and my uncle out." Well, we are rolling into the bank and saying, "Hey, here's our plan. We're going to borrow $1.2 million extra. Yes, it's a lot of money, but we understand where we're at, and this is our goal to get there. And by the way, we created enough borrowing power that you guys are secured, and my debt to asset ratio has dropped down to 48% instead of 72 as a young person that's doing it independent." So it's been a great tool in that. And I think too, in an environment like this, we've got to be progressive. We got to be ahead of the curve. So yes, it's bleak. You talk to most bankers across the country. Everyone in farm country is stressed out, worried. Who's going to go bankrupt? Who's not going to be around next year? And I don't want to lose my job because I loaned you the money. And that's in theory, that's what we're hearing real life out there. I want to be able to take you guys whenever you find an opportunity to go scoop up the 500 acres at the neighbor. Does it make sense in the first place? And then two, can we run that through the scenario and see what kind of financial stress, or is it going to put you in a more profitable position because now you can take those fixed debts on equipment, machinery, what have you, and spread that out over another 500 acres. These are the things that you need to be able to do, not on a whim, but on real data, real numbers, and I think you can really expand your operation and feel good about making some of those decisions,
Yeah.
rather than letting that emotional purchase like take over. Because we all know, like we've all gone through there, and you buy something, and a week later you're like, "What did I do? Is this going to be okay? You think I can get out of this? Maybe, I don't know." But
Yeah.
we want to alleviate that.
Yeah. And I know Jonathan and Holly, in the work that you've done, we've obviously utilized scenarios to be like looking ahead, but for those cases where capital is definitely going to be needed to take advantage of, we've also utilized the accrual P&L and cash flow, which I'll show you. And then as well, we've utilized the assets and liabilities, fair market value aspect of Figured. So you can see here in Figured, you can do an accrual P&L. Like I mentioned before, if you were to connect the QuickBooks Online file, not do a single thing, run their profit and loss, it's going to look exactly the same. But the beauty of Figured is you are building that accrual view with the production data to be able to run a profit and loss that shows all of those different profit centers. You can toggle between cash and accrual. You can do monthly versus annually, which is great. You can compare across different periods and even consolidate, not based on trackers, but just by your chart of accounts instead. And then what you'll see is you have basically this accrual P&L to be able to refer back to if maybe scenarios is more projecting more long-term. And additionally, you can save and update this view. You could view it every day if you really wanted to. You also can do a projected cash flow, which Jonathan, you just touched on, is, kind of a key thing in that you consider in decision making. You can do monthly or annually do cash flows that way. You could do top operating expenses if you wish, and a number of different other inclusions. But you do have this cash flow here, and you can, Holly and I, we've been working on doing like forecasted cash flowing, which is great too. Another collaboration thing, you can share this with everyone relevant on the team, and then have this saved and updated view to refer back to, which is awesome. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on assets and liabilities. So that scenarios tool, you're obviously inputting the balance sheet within that, projection you're doing, but you can do an accrual view of your assets and liabilities here in this tab. It has your QuickBooks Online value, and then it has your figured value. So it allows you to do reevaluations at particular dates if you wish, tie it to an account on your balance sheet or a figured only account, and then be able to see that reflected in the balance sheet accordingly. Lastly, we have our statement of position, which kind of gives you that fair market value lens. And what you can do here is it's giving your balance sheet at a point in time. You can unlock and edit this to reflect how you wish it to look. And then as you do that, you can view the report to see those accompanying changes and be able to share that with your farming team. So Jonathan and Holly, kind of in the cases where scenarios didn't work, I know we've utilized some of these reports for some of your clients. How have you, noticed that help with efficiencies in Empire Ag?
I know, Holly, we've just recently, we've had several of the market-based valuations on balance sheets. That has been huge. Good example, we had a producer, 2.4 million was what his balance sheet was showing up. We went through and I asked him, I said, how did you get here? Like, what reports did you send to the bank? Like, give me a rundown. And it's a new client. He called the accounting office, said, hey, can you guys get me a profit and loss and balance sheet? So we go to look at all the things that are listed on his balance sheet, and it comes out. And what we actually did, we took actual appraisals on all the equipment and the real estate, took an 80% of that value, and it came out to 4.2 million. So we go and talk to the bank because they're thinking that he's a distressed loan because they had him on the books at 2.6. And we're able to go in, look at that. We ended up changing banks with this particular client, but it's one of those situations where he didn't take the time, didn't have the tools available. Yes, he could have done his own spreadsheet, but again, we go back to time. And what's nice about Figured is we already have those QuickBooks files that we can just adjust it, put it where it needs to go, and get those reports printed out and quickly act. I mean, we were able to get that financing deal done in 7 days, and that doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Well, that, I suppose, really neatly leads us into, I guess what next? Oh, I'll let you take that one, Erin. Oh, there we go. Share that. There we go. We got it. So yeah, really neatly leads us into, I guess, what next. We've talked a lot today about some real examples and hopefully giving you a few, I guess, practical and tangible options and next steps too around what could we look to do, what is the state of my financial position going into the next season, or what is the conversation I could be going to have with my advisor or with my farming clients as we look to plan ahead into the next growing season. So for the accountants and advisors on the call, we did want to really quickly touch on, and conscious of your time, we'll make sure we get you all wrapped up before lunch. But we want to give you something tangible to be able to act on as a next step. So for those of you who are still looking at that, I guess, that cloud conversion piece, or what might be next, how can I actually get into some of these tools? If you're on our last webinar with VARC Solutions, they'll be able to, one of our solutions providers, they're going to be able to help you with that migration support, that QuickBooks cleanup. They'll be able to offer, a free scoping or strategy session to help you get set up or get enabled, in a really practical way for the season ahead, and get those clients, set up in a way for success. And then if you are already, or you do already have a core group of clients or farmers that are using QuickBooks Online, then we would love to help you have a bit of a play with Figured. We'll set you up with a free 2-week trial or a custom one-on-one demo, whatever's going to suit you or whatever's going to be appropriate. The other thing that, we have on offer now is our Figured Quick Start program. And, something we've sort of refined over the last 12 to 6 months across all our markets. And it's, how can we take a small group of your existing clients today and prove out, a lot of the points that we discussed today, whether that's getting bank ready or making a plan, prepping for the future, and setting up with, training and support from our team, and then into other things as well, like marketing or being able to prioritize those first groups of clients. That's all wrapped up in part of that Quick Start program. So as part of that, we'd help bring in a full year's financial plan for free into the plan grid based on last year's actuals, and set up those automated report packs as well, so that, you can have those bank ready reports ready to go each month for your clients. And as part of that, we do have an online training and support team based here in Denver with Aaron and I, and who will be able to help you get set up and go and getting the best out of Figured. And for the farmers on the call, obviously love the opportunity to take advantage of support from the likes of Empire Ag as one of our partners, whether that's learning about Figured or bookkeeping support. Outside of that as well, Jonathan and Holly have very generously opened up the elite retreat for farmers and producers. Now, this is usually exclusive only to those involved in their masterclass program, but they've very generously opened it up to those who have come along to the webinar today who might want to attend that. So, Jonathan or Holly, I'd let you really quickly talk to what's involved with the elite retreat as well.
Absolutely. We really pride ourselves in being able to provide value to our customers. And so we started last year, everybody convened in Dallas. It's a great venue, and we're able to get, elite minds together and really tackle what's going to help us be productive, be profitable, and be better people. This is not your typical farm and ranch meeting. Very much we engage our individuals. We also, it's not one of those where the wives go and shop. Like, we want them to get as much out of it as the husbands that are there. Like, it has been a great place to go. And I think if you are interested, Figured is our title sponsor this year, and they're going to be there. We're going to have a lot of things for you guys to enjoy, learn from, and be able to take back and put to work on your farm or ranch.
Awesome. Cool. And so we do just really want to quickly capture, I guess, what that might look like in terms of how we can help in those next steps as well. So if you want to learn a little bit more about Figured, or you're looking for some support in the QuickBooks space, or just helping get the books tidied up, please let us know, and we can get in touch appropriately and help get you started or get you on the journey going into the next season and being prepared.
Nice. And you can select as many answers in here as you want in the poll. So that should keep going here. But honestly, thanks so much for joining us today, Jonathan and Holly. Conscious of time, thanks for everyone for staying a minute over. I know we really loved working together with you, and honestly collaborating with you as partners, and honestly other partners that we have here at Figured. So thanks so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you guys for having us.